Good morning. So glad to have you back with us again here on the HealthCall Live Radio Hour. Glad you are part of our growing family of listeners. Boy, we have a lot to cover today. We're going to jump right in here with Dr. Dave Diehl from Dupont Family Dentistry because of what the World Health Organization did this week. Really caught me by surprise, and I think many of the dentists across the country. The WHO recommended against having just standard dental care during this COVID pandemic, and that came as a big surprise to me, Dr. Dave, because I know all that you've done to protect your staff and your patients. It's pretty surprising. What's your organization, the ADA? What are they saying?
They came out against it really quickly, and in fact, even their statement was that they're strongly against that. The World Health Organization's position on that. Not to get too political, but there's no real science behind it that I know of. There's no real good explanation as to why they said what they said. And when I read it, to me, it almost seemed like it was written in a timeline that would have been more consistent with like the end of March or early April when we were really unsure of things and everything was shut down. It just didn't seem to jive with what's going on today. We have so much data. We have so much history right now throughout the entire world. There's no reported cases coming from dental offices anywhere. There are people in dental offices that are getting sick, but they're tying that more to family gatherings, social things outside of a dental office. But to date, I can't find anything that says there's any dental office patients that are getting sick. And so that alone, that doesn't make sense. And then the second thing is there's a study out of L.A. Talking about how patients with periodontal disease are 22 times more likely to die if they're on a ventilator than someone that doesn't have it. So again, there's really no good reason that I can see why they would come out and say that.
Yeah, it does seem kind of crazy. Part of their justification was that the dental procedures aerosolized the virus. And I know you've made a change, as not just your office, but dentists generally have made a change. You're moving away from the whirling brush that you use when you're working on us. Tell us more about that.
Well, so in my office, what we've done is the PPE, the protection that we've always used, has been just amplified. We're doing more and more. Instead of wearing one mask, we're wearing two masks. Instead of wearing a level 3 mask, now we're wearing the N95 mask with a level 3 on top of it, and all kinds of things. Air purification. We have something called a Diehl shield, kind of a fun project. And, it's a barrier that goes between the patient and myself. And all those things, again, we are protecting ourselves very well and the patients as well. And so there's so much we've done, and the risk is, I don't want to say it's non-existent, but it is very, very, very controlled. So
are you still having people wait in the parking lot until they can, their appointment time?
Yeah, we've opened it up a little bit. We'll allow 1 to 2 people in the reception area, and there's plenty of room. We probably could have a few more. The vast majority are staying in their car. We call them, they come in. But sometimes there's a mom with kids, or maybe there's an elderly patient, and their caretaker comes in with them, and they'll hang out in the reception area. Yeah. But we've definitely decreased it.
I suspect the risk is greater to you than to the patients, right?
Yeah, ultimately it is, yes.
Are your staff, have you had anybody test positive?
No, nobody's tested positive. We've had, everybody in the office, and I'm sure it is just like in society as a whole, some are very fearful and very worried, and some are pretty relaxed and pretty comfortable. We're all doing the same protocol. We're all doing the same things. But as time has gone on, I think there's a level of comfort that we have now. We've gotten a little bit more feeling better and better as we've gone.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people are kind of settling in and realizing where their risk really lies, and how we can mediate that. You mentioned the Diehl shield. Tell me about this. Is this something you've created?
I mean, it is. Kind of was born out of necessity. I saw these shields going up in the grocery store and banks and different places, and I thought, well, gosh, it'd be great if we had some kind of shield that would create a barrier between myself and the patient and the dental assistant. And from that, I saw some different ideas. Other people were thinking the same thing. And so we created something that's basically an arm that attaches to the back of the chair, and you can manipulate it and move it, and you can position it so it's between yourself and the patient. So the aerosols, which we're all concerned about, we have something called a dry shield as well. It goes inside the patient's mouth. But if any aerosols that come out, they go on the shield. And it works. It's really kind of nice. And it gives, when you can see some splatter that comes up on the shield, you're like, all right, that would have ended up on me or on my face. And so I'm really grateful that we have it.
Oh, that's kind of neat. So is this something you think you're going to continue to use even after the pandemic?
Yeah, once you get used to using it, it takes a little bit because there's all this PPE that we're doing. It's just changing how we do things.
Right.
And at first it's frustrating. You have to kind of a little bit of a learning curve with it. But once you get into it, it's kind of like maybe wearing a seatbelt for a car. It's like I just don't feel comfortable getting in a car without my seatbelt on.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
boy, it's just second nature. You just grab it and go, don't you?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? We were talking earlier about the impact of oral health on our general health.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned the study. I want to hear more about that. If you have periodontal disease, you are at a greater risk of death from COVID?
So, the study was out of L.A. It's a newer study. I can't remember who wrote it, but they basically were looking at patients that were on ventilators, and they were looking at the number of people. I guess there's an 80% chance if you're on a ventilator, you're going to die.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, so they were looking at those patients and doing a bunch of studies on their health, and one of the bigger common factors was what they had periodontal disease. And if you think about it for a moment, it kind of makes sense. In the mouth, you have a lot of bacteria. A lot of them are not ones, they're bad, especially if you have advanced periodontal disease. So left untreated, that exacerbates, it gets worse. Your immune system gets knocked down for everything else you're going through. And then you have a forced intubation, you have all the air that's going in there. So that bacteria now has a greater chance of settling in the lungs. And there's really good correlation or really bad correlation with that bacteria getting in the lung, causing, I think they call it a cytokine
storm. Yeah, what's happening in COVID?
Adding to it,
right? What's happening in COVID is your body is freaking out, and it's not the virus that kills you; it's your body's reaction to that. So it makes total sense that if you're already at a high inflammation state and you've got other things going on, that I could see that.
Yeah. So.
Well, we're going to plan a segment down the road. We're going to talk again about oral health and how what happens in your mouth affects your risk of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, colon cancer. There are just a bunch of diseases that all are related to what's going on inside your mouth. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. Hey, one of the things before we jump into, I want to talk about computers in your office and then how you can change my smile in just one day. That's just fascinating to me. But I want to ask you a quick question here. We were having a debate about electric toothbrushes. I'm a big fan. I use one. Can you see the difference?
Yes, I can. Absolutely. 100%.
What do you see in a patient? How can you tell?
Well, if you just, we all, the term gingivitis, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, inflamed gums.
Inflamed gums. You have plaque on your teeth, tartar on your teeth, maybe stain, all those things, dirty teeth, okay? If you take a patient using a manual toothbrush and you convert them to, I'm a huge fan for Sonicare. And Sonicare toothbrushes to me are the best by far. But you get that, and all they do is just simply change the tool that they're using to clean their teeth. We see a night and day difference. They'll come back in, and so the same effort, whether it's a manual toothbrush, but they convert it to a Sonicare, come back and stain's gone, tartar plaque is much less, and gingivitis is greatly reduced. And if they get really diligent about it and follow some other recommendations we have, they can get to a place where I'd call them an A-plus patient just by using a Sonicare.
Wow. Does the toothpaste matter much?
Yeah, you know what? Yes. What I find interesting about toothpaste, it's hard to stay on top of them. There's so many of them. But I think that there's some toothpaste that seem to work better for some people and some that works better for others. So you kind of have to play a little around. There's certain brands that I like, and there's certain toothpaste I think are really good. But sometimes you just have to find. I'm a tartar builder myself. And for some reason, Crest toothpaste typically do not work well for me. Colgate's better. And then there's another brand that I use called OxyFresh that's even better. And so, you kind of play around with it a little bit and find out what works well for you. Don't go for just a label. Really seriously look into it and see what you find that works well for you.
Okay, great. And I'm here with Dr. Dave Diehl from the Dupont Family Dentistry, and we are talking about same-day smiles, your ability to change my entire look in just one day, and that's all because of computers. That's really revolutionized your industry.
It certainly has. Just talking to a friend of mine recently that owns a lab, and over COVID he had made some advances, and there's a lot of things that have changed so much, even in the last 2 years. We've been on this trend for the last 20 years. 5 years ago, 2 years ago, even now, it's like amazing what we can do and how fast it's changing.
Well, the biggest change for me is when you're doing an impression, I don't have to have that goop in my mouth. I hate that.
Yeah.
So tell me how it works now.
So right now we have a three-dimensional camera. So when you open up, and we put a camera in there, and we kind of scan around, and it's a scanning camera kind of thing, and it creates an incredibly accurate, more accurate than anything else, three-dimensional image of what's going on in your mouth. And so that is converted to a CAD/CAM process and goes on a computer. And from that, we can design a crown. We can design a whole set of crowns. We can design bridges, whatever we need to do, inlays, onlays, veneers. And then there's a machine that will actually manufacture those things. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to make any kind of crown or whatever. And we can install it, within a half an hour after we begin. So it's a game changer. It has completely changed the way we've done dentistry.
Yeah, so I'm not coming back for 2 and 3 appointments and waiting weeks and all that stuff, having temporaries in place.
Absolutely. And and anybody that's gone through that, very few people like temporaries, and they come off. It interrupts your day. It's hard to get people in to find time to resubmit those temporaries, and it's such a battle. The old way, we would take impressions, we send it to a lab, and a lab tech which they would do a great job. They're very, very skilled, and they'd create a crown based on what they think it should be. And one of the nice things that I really like about this is, from start to finish, I am in control. I get to make it the way that I want it to be made for you individually. And so when people leave that same day, they've got a crown that they don't have to come back to. Maybe they have to bite adjustment or something once in a while, but it's done. So it's great.
That change in your smile is so powerful. That has such a psychological impact. The confidence boost.
Yeah.
I know. I just shared the story a little bit earlier. I was in high school. I had braces and then a big steel cap right in the front right, one of my incisors.
Gosh, yeah.
I was the biggest dork you could possibly imagine, and that was really crushing.
Yeah,
And I've seen the before and afters that you sent me. It's really significant, the changes. Tell me some stories about these patients and how their lives have changed.
They're fun. The technology is awesome, but what you get to do to help people is way greater. And it's neat to sit back and say, wow, we were able to accomplish this in 4 or 5 hours, but to see the transformation in a person's life is significant. And I have story after story after story. Whether one of my favorites, one that I'll never forget, there was a Harley Davidson biker guy came in one day.
Big burly dude.
Big guy, 6'4", 300 plus pounds. Yeah. And, with the goatee, mustache, and all that stuff. And he was very intimidating. I was talking to him, and I was nervous. And so I hadn't had a chance to see his mouth, and he opens up, and he's like, Doc, I don't smile because the way my teeth look. And people are afraid of me. And I'm like, well, yeah, I get it, And he goes, and I want to be able to smile. So we took him through a process. And I got to know him very well. In fact, we're good friends. And he is the biggest teddy bear you want to meet. He's not intimidating once you get to. In fact, he's kind of a baby. But when you see a guy that goes around like that doesn't smile, and then he smiles, and he's a hugger, and he wants to know everybody, and it had a significant impact on his life. So whether you're a Harley Davidson guy, or you're a grandmother that wants to take selfies with their grandkids, or a business owner that just wants to, make his smile better, the application for this kind of thing is it's universal. It seems like anybody that's struggling with that kind of stuff.
So you can do all of just one or two, or all of them in a single day?
So we'll do, pretty commonly, we'll do 4, 6, or 8, depending on the need. 12, I think, is about the most I've done in a day. It gets hard, the more you do, the more time consuming, and there's a lot more to manage. But 6 to 8 is very common. Yeah.
And these are permanent. I'm not going to. They're not going to change color. They're not going to ever.
Exactly.
Obviously, they're never going to get a cavity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and and you can get a little technical about it. The material that we use to make these crowns is always changing, and it just seems like every couple of years it just gets better and better. And there's a product or a line that we're using this year now. I'm just in love with. It's the most natural, shines up the best, and bonds the best, and it just really it keeps getting better and better all the time.
Yeah, because you can spot older dental work that
absolutely.
Really just looks it just doesn't look right.
Yeah. The newer materials, you don't get that gray black line at the gum line. Yeah. They look real, they look alive. My thing is I want it to look alive, and in my eye, that might be a little different than a patient, but when we're all done, everybody's happy.
I didn't think about that. So you have to be kind of an artist in this process.
I tell people all the time, I'm more of an artist than I am a scientist. You'll meet dentists that are different ways. I'm definitely more of an artist.
Can you, sometimes orthodontic work, people have had, their smile is a little bit too perfect. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, totally.
A little too Hollywood.
You're fun. Yeah, absolutely.
And so do you bring that sensitivity to the process?
We do. I would definitely in the interview process, I need to clearly understand what their goal is. What kind of look are you going for? People will bring in pictures of when they're younger. People will bring in pictures of Hollywood people, and this is what I want. And those things definitely direct which way I go with the design. Yeah.
Huh.
So
thought about that.
It's kind of funny, it's almost interesting. If you took a person, you put some square teeth on, and then you put some nice, normal. It's amazing how much of a difference it can make. Yeah.
Give me one more story, another success story. I find these so interesting.
So trying to think of another. There was a grandmother that. Well, okay, I've already shared that one. There was a lady I met one time that had an abusive relationship. And I saw her for an exam, and we put together a plan, and she disappeared. And this happens sometimes. People don't follow through with it right away. She came back a few years later, and she was like, I'm ready. And we went through it, and so I got a chance to know her more so. And in that process, we were done with it. She was telling me how the relationship had ended, and she was no longer with that person. But she said that every time she looked in the mirror and she smiled, she saw that abusive relationship, and it was a constant reminder.
Yeah.
And now completely, there were tears. She was like, when I walk by and I smile now, I know that part of my life is over. And that smile now is my new me. And she's a very successful person. She's done really well in her life. And you just see people blossom.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, it's quite clear. I would never have had the television career that I had if I hadn't had some good dental work years ago. That was, it was a long, drawn-out process. So I'm glad to know that I can get this done in just a couple days. So I'm assuming there's a consultation appointment first, and then you kind of do all the planning?
Yeah, exactly. So the actual day of doing the work, we can do that in a day. Now, not everybody's a candidate. I'll back up for a minute. There are people come in, and I have a few patients that we're doing major reconstruction, and it's a year-long process. But there are, if you've got a good foundation, a good place to begin with, then yes, we can do it in a day. But yeah, you come in for a consultation, get to know you, meet you, kind of understand the fees and everything, make sure that's something they're comfortable with. And then we usually begin with we do an impression, but we'll do it with a laser or the scanner. The lab will design a smile for us. They'll put together something, and then I use that as a guide to go from, and it makes the whole process easier and faster.
And then you fine-tune and kind of personalize it from there.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk cost very briefly here. That's always a big challenge. How can people manage that cost?
So, again, the spectrum of people that come in is all over the place. Some people come in and write a check and everything's fine. Other people have to plan, save money. This one female, she waited, I think, about 4 years. And saved money, and then other people finance it. And there's a bunch of options. We work with insurance companies as best we can, and I would say probably 60-70% of the people are going to finance it in some form or another.
Well, I can tell you that's an investment that changed my world.
Yeah.
The confidence to smile broadly and easily.
Yeah.
That sends such an important signal to the world about who you are and how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
So I understand those stories of transformation. I believe those are true.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, we have to run. Thank you very much. It's Dr. Dave Diehl from Dupont Family Dentistry. I hope you will check them out. And if you have questions about a same-day smile transformation, Dr. Dave Diehl at Dupont Family Dentistry is the place to be.